Welcome. I'm going to tell you a story that still gives me chills. This isn't one of those made-up horror tales designed to spook you around a campfire. This is real life, and it happened to me. The events of that night are so vivid in my mind that it feels as though I just lived them yesterday, not 2 years ago. I'm 22 now, and at the time I was a 20-year-old college student trying to make some extra cash. I had a couple of babysitting gigs, but my favorite was the one I had on weekends. I was a nanny for an incredibly wealthy family that lived in a sprawling house. They'd often go away for the weekend, leaving me in charge of their 2 children. I'll call them James, who was 7, and Jessica, who was 5. The kids were well behaved, the family was wonderful, and they even had a guest bedroom dedicated just for me. It was, in every sense of the word, a dream job. The particular weekend I'm telling you about was in the fall. The weather was crisp and cool, and the trees were shedding their leaves. I arrived on a Friday, and the night was uneventful. I spent my time playing with James and his video games, and with Jessica and her beloved dolls. Once they were tucked in for the night, Jessica at 7:30 and James at 8:30, I was free. The family's property was enormous and luxurious. A large pond sat at its center, and across it was a massive pool house. This wasn't just a simple shed. It was an entertainment hub, complete with a bar, pool table, darts, arcade games, and a giant TV. The most unique feature was an intercom system, connecting it to the main house. With a single button press, you could talk to someone in the house from the pool house, and vice versa. It was a place of luxury and solitude, and I loved hanging out there. That Friday night, I settled into the pool house, watching the movie White Chicks and FaceTiming with my friends. The intercom suddenly buzzed, making me jump. I answered, and Jessica's small, scared voice came through. She said she was hearing noises. It was unusual for her to wake up in the middle of the night, so I immediately went to check on her. I set down my food and ran back across the yard to the main house. I used the code to let myself in and went to Jessica's room. She was already back in bed, looking small and frightened. I gave her a hug, tucked her in, and after she seemed to calm down, I left. As I was walking back down the hallway to grab a glass of wine from the kitchen, I heard a faint creak on the floor from another room. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I tried to convince myself it was just the house settling, and with the pool house still lit up and my movie playing, I decided to go back. I went outside, locked the door, and ran across the yard. Back on the couch, I was distracted, unable to shake the feeling of unease. Then the intercom buzzed again, making me jump. I answered, but this time, there was only silence. I called out Jessica's and James's names, but no one answered. I thought I could hear someone breathing on the other end, and a real chilling fear began to set in. I called my friend Kelsey, desperate for some reassurance. I told her about Jessica's fear, the sound I heard, and now the silent intercom call. While I was on the phone, I kept my eyes fixed on the house, through the pool house window. The hallway lights suddenly turned on, and any doubt I had vanished when a large, masculine figure stepped into the frame. He seemed to see me and stopped, staring directly at the pool house. I screamed and dropped my phone, realizing the intercom was still on. I quickly picked up my phone, hung up on Kelsey, and dialed 911. As I was screaming the address and what was happening into the phone, I was also shouting into the intercom, telling the man I was calling the police. I then heard Jessica's piercing scream coming through the intercom. I broke down, falling to my knees, as the 911 operator tried to calm me down. She told me the police were on their way, and I needed to wait. I was in a complete panic. "He has the kids," I screamed. Then I heard Jessica's voice again, this time calling my name. I ran back to the intercom and shouted, "Yes, I'm here. Get your brother and get out of the house." She was crying, saying there was a man in the house. I knew I had to act. It was the bravest thing I'd ever done. I sprinted back across the yard to the house. The kids were already at the door sobbing. I grabbed both of them, and we ran back to the pool house. We hid in the dark, and I stayed on the phone with 911, doing my best to be strong for them. Finally, the 911 operator told me the police were there and would meet us at the pool house. I felt an incredible wave of relief as I saw the flashlights shining through the windows. I led the kids outside to meet the officers. A female cop took the children, and another took me to a separate car to get my statement. As more police cars arrived, I saw them bringing out a man in handcuffs. He looked to be in his late 60s, and his face was horribly disfigured. He stared at me as they put him in the back of a car. Jessica and James's parents were called immediately. There was no way we were staying there that night. I went home, but I couldn't sleep. The shock and adrenaline kept me awake. The family pressed charges, and with their resources, I'm certain that man got what he deserved. I told the parents I couldn't continue working for them. I was too haunted by what happened. I can only hope those kids were able to heal from the trauma of that night. If you're someone who enjoys true, terrifying encounters from the wild, you're in the right place. What happened to me on a solo camping trip in the woods wasn't just unsettling, it was enough to make me swear off that forest forever. And if you've ever thought about going camping alone, maybe you'll think twice after hearing this. I was 28 years old when it happened, just me and my beagle, Reggie, out on what was supposed to be a peaceful 2-day camping trip in a local woodland area. I thought I knew well. I had always enjoyed getting away from the noise of everyday life, disconnecting from my phone, from emails, from people. I thought I'd found the perfect spot to reset. Just me, nature, and my dog. It was early November. The days were still warm enough for a t-shirt, but the nights dropped down into the 40s. I came prepared, packed a good tent, my thick sleeping bag, and a decent amount of food. I even brought my fishing gear, because the lake about a mile hike into the woods was perfect for catching dinner. Reggie loves the outdoors, and this place had become our quiet little escape over the past year. I hiked us in about a mile from my truck, deep enough that we wouldn't hear anything from the road, but close enough that we could hike back quickly if needed. The sun was still high when I found the clearing I usually used. Flat ground, just enough trees for shade, and a beautiful view of the lake through a break in the trees. I set up my tent, arranged the fire pit, unpacked the cooler, and made everything homey for the night. Then I leashed up Reggie, just for the hike, and we went to fish. That first afternoon was peaceful. I caught a few small fish I ended up throwing back. Reggie, though, kept glancing toward the forest, tail stiff, ears perked every time I glanced to see what he was looking at. There was nothing, no sound, no movement, but Reggie didn't stop staring. Later, as we hiked around the lake, something caught my eye. On the other side of the lake, right where our camp was, I saw movement. At first I thought maybe deer, but as I squinted, I was pretty sure it was two people walking out of the woods near my tent. It was far, but they looked like adult figures. A cold, creeping unease slid down my spine. I picked up the pace, calling for Reggie to heal. By the time we got back, the tent flap was open. My cooler was moved slightly, but nothing obvious was missing. My gut told me someone had been snooping, and that was enough to rattle me. I didn't feel safe there anymore, so I repacked and moved camp another quarter-mile up the lake, where the tree coverage was thicker and the terrain more hidden. Once I settled again, I chopped some wood and started a fire in the pit. The sun dipped, and the forest came alive with the sounds of insects and the occasional owl. I heated up some canned chili, fed Reggie, and sat by the fire with my journal. That's when Reggie started growling again. He stood perfectly still, ears forward, staring into the dark wall of forest beyond the light of the fire. I grabbed my flashlight, scanned the tree line, Nothing, but the hairs on my neck were standing straight up. I decided not to take any chances. I doused the fire and took Reggie into the tent early. Inside, I tried to read to calm my nerves. Reggie didn't settle. His ears twitched constantly. He kept pacing in tight little circles before growling again, low and deep. I kept whispering, "What is it, boy?" trying to convince myself it was a raccoon or something equally harmless. But it didn't feel harmless. Eventually Reggie laid down, but his eyes didn't close. I turned off the lantern and tried to sleep. Hours later, I was jarred awake by Reggie's barking. He was going berserk. Before I could calm him, I heard something outside, whistling. That slow, two-note kind of whistle people use to call a dog. Chills ran down my spine. I froze. Then the whistle turned into a weird clicking noise, like someone making a rhythm with their tongue. It was getting closer. Then came the unmistakable sound of footsteps on dry leaves. They approached the tent slowly, each step deliberate. Crunch, crunch, then silent. Reggie was losing it, snarling, barking, scratching at the tent walls. I grabbed him and held him tightly. I didn't dare say a word. My heart was hammering so loud I could barely hear anything else. Then one more whistle, this time just inches outside the tent zipper. I couldn't breathe. I gathered every ounce of courage I had and forced out a threat. "You better get out of here, you. I have a gun." But my voice cracked. I sounded terrified because I was. The footsteps started again, moving away this time, slow, deliberate, fading into the forest. I sat in the tent with my heart pounding. Reggie growled off and on for nearly an hour. Every creak of a tree, every gust of wind sent my pulse into overdrive. I wanted to run, to leave, but I was frozen. The dark outside the tent felt suffocating. My phone had no service. I couldn't call for help, couldn't even message anyone. And just when I thought maybe it was over, I heard it. A scream, far off, but shrill and unmistakably human. A woman's scream. It echoed through the woods, long and blood-curdling, like someone begging for help. That was it. I grabbed Reggie, yanked on my boots, grabbed the flashlight, and we ran. I didn't stop, didn't look back, didn't think about leaving gear behind, just kept running through the trees in pitch black, stumbling over roots and rocks, panting until I finally saw the faint shape of my truck through the trees. Still no cell service. I locked the doors and sat shaking in the driver's seat. Reggie sat curled in the passenger seat, whining. We stayed in the truck all night. At dawn, when the sun made the woods less intimidating, I returned to pack up what was left. I didn't even bother checking if anything was stolen. I just grabbed everything, threw it in the truck, and got the hell out of there. As soon as I had bars on my phone, I called the local non-emergency police number and reported the scream, the footsteps, the whistling. They took the information, but I never heard anything back. No one called. No one asked questions. I still don't know who was out there or what they were doing, or who that woman was, if there even was a woman. But I've never been back to those woods again. Not alone, not with friends, not ever. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as unsettling as I did living it, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below. And whatever you do, never ignore the sound of someone whistling in the woods. Tonight, I want to share a true story that still gives me chills every time I think about it. It was a rainy weekend night, the kind that makes you want to stay in, curl up in bed, and binge watch horror movies. Our house is a split-level design, with the upstairs functioning almost like a separate apartment. My brother and I live up there, while our parents occupy the lower level. It's a cozy setup, perfect for some personal space. But on this night, that layout would become a terrifying detail I'll never forget. My friends bailed on our usual weekend plans because of the weather. I didn't mind. I grabbed some snacks, turned off the lights in my room, and decided to finally watch Dr. Sleep. I'd heard it was a chilling sequel to The Shining, and I figured the stormy weather would make it even more atmospheric. And it did, too much so. In hindsight, about halfway through the film, I paused it to grab a snack from the kitchen. The wind was rattling the windows, and rain tapped steadily against the glass. As I walked to the pantry, I heard something, a dull thud from downstairs. I froze for a second, but then brushed it off, probably just the house settling, or the wind. I grabbed a box of crackers, turned off the kitchen light, and headed back to my room. That's when I noticed the backyard motion light was on. It cast long, eerie shadows across the yard. I didn't think too much of it. Maybe a raccoon or something. I shut my bedroom door, sat on the bed, and turned the movie back on. But within seconds, I heard another noise. This time it was clearer, a door shutting. The back door. My room is directly above the back entrance of the house. Our walls are thin, so any sound from downstairs carries easily. I paused the movie and listened. Footsteps. Someone was walking slowly across the downstairs floor. I grabbed my phone and texted our family group chat. Who just got home? My mom replied almost instantly. We're not home. Remember? We're staying at Grandma's this weekend. Panic crept into my chest. That meant whoever was downstairs wasn't supposed to be. I typed out another message. Alex, is that you? No reply. The footsteps grew quieter, moving toward the front of the house. I was frozen, every nerve on edge. Then creaking stairs, someone was coming up. Slowly, deliberately, skipping the other rooms, heading straight for mine. I muted the TV. My heart was pounding so loudly. I thought the intruder might hear it. I lay back in bed and closed my eyes, just enough to appear asleep. But I left them cracked open, barely, just enough to see. The footsteps reached my door. It creaked open. A figure stood in the doorway. I could barely make out his silhouette, but I could see his eyes, locked on me. Watch, and it wasn't Alex. He stood there for what felt like an eternity. Maybe 30 seconds, maybe more. Just staring, not moving, just watching. Then the door quietly closed. I held my breath, my fingers shaking. I typed, Alex, please tell me that's you in the house. This time he replied immediately. No, I'm still at Eric's. What are you talking about? I called 911 and whispered into the phone, trying to keep my voice from trembling. That's when I heard footsteps again. He was still outside my door. He must have heard me whisper. Then finally, the footsteps moved away, down the stairs, and silence. The dispatcher stayed on the line with me. Minutes later, there was a knock at the front door. They entered in pairs, flashlights in hand, checking every inch of the house, closets, under beds, even behind furniture. But there was no one, no sign of forced entry. Just one thing, the back door, unlocked. Apparently, my parents had forgotten to lock it before leaving for the weekend. The officers stayed with me until they were confident the intruder was gone. They advised me to lock all doors and windows and call again if I heard anything. After they left, I deadbolted everything, even wedged a chair under my bedroom doorknob. I wasn't sleeping that night. But the nightmare wasn't over. Maybe an hour later, the backyard motion light flicked on again. I hesitated, then crept toward my window and peeked out. A tall figure was walking away from the house, into the darkest part of the yard where the light couldn't reach. He didn't look back. He disappeared into the trees. I don't know if he tried to come back, or was just watching to see if the house was vulnerable again. But this time, the door was locked. This time he didn't get in. Since that night, I lock every door and window religiously. I double and triple check before going to bed, even if I'm not alone, because all it took was one simple mistake, and someone walked straight into my home and stood just inches from me, while I pretended to sleep. But the part that haunts me the most, the way they stared through the darkness, studying me like I wasn't a person, just something to observe, something he wanted. That image will stay with me forever. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story or found it chilling, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more true horror tales, and leave a comment below telling me what you would have done in that situation. Stay safe out there and always lock your door.